Are you hosting a holiday party or special corporate event soon? If so, then you need to have a photo booth. And Pick Me Events is the best in H-Town. That's who we used for our Listener Appreciation Fest, and the pictures were awesome. From classic photo booths to a VIP 360-degree video setup, they have it all. And check this out. Their new Pixie robot is a roaming robot that will move around your event and come to you to take pictures. It sounds like sci-fi, but it is real. Check them out at pickmeevents.com. That's PICME events.com. And mention CityCast Houston for a special discount. Step into a world of real holiday magic at Coca-Cola's Classic Christmas, debuting November 16th and running through December 29th at Houston's Memorial City Mall. This season, cherished holiday traditions come to life in Houston amid a spectacle of dazzling lights. Crafted by the creators of the renowned world's largest Christmas light maze, Enchant Christmas, this immersive holiday celebration promises to create unforgettable moments of togetherness and joy at this beloved time of year. Learn more at ClassicChristmas.com. That's ClassicChristmas.com. Today on CityCast Houston, it's Friday, so we're breaking down the most important stories of the week. The tragic death of 15-year-old Sergio Rodriguez, who was struck and killed by a train on his way to school, has become a major wake-up call. But while city leaders are scrambling to prevent more tragedies, I can't help but ask, why have trains been allowed to stop in the middle of Houston neighborhoods for so long, making it dangerous for thousands of children? Plus, District Attorney Kim Ogg just dropped a controversial move weeks before leaving office. And we'll preview our Texas travel bucket list for 2025. Houston Chronicle's education reporter Claire Partain and Lucio Vasquez with Houston Public Media join me to talk about those stories and more. It's Friday, December 13th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. It's a beautiful Friday here in the city of Houston, and I am so excited to have Claire Partain on for the first time ever. Claire, how are you?
Given what I've been covering this week, I've been better. It's pretty tragic, and we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But I will say that I'm looking forward to the holidays, and I'm also hoping to get some answers for that family soon.
Absolutely. We're going to break that story down in just a second. And Lucio, welcome back in. How are you, man?
I'm doing all right. I appreciate you guys having me as always.
All right. So before we jump into our biggest story of the week, I do have an icebreaker here for y'all because I saw this trending all over social media this week. And it was that Jeopardy had Houston as a category. So we were featured on one of the rows, and I want to ask y'all some of the questions. And Claire, you didn't grow up around the Houston area, but you've been here for a while now covering our greater Houston metro area. So you get the first one, okay? Just like Jeopardy style, you can go 200, 400, 600, 800, or 1,000, all right? Which one do you want to play first? I'm going to ask you the actual questions from Jeopardy.
I'm going to go 600 and be slightly ambitious.
Okay, here's for $600. The National Museum of Funeral History has the exhibit History of This Practice from Ancient Egypt to Civil War Battlefields. What is it?
Would that be embalming or mummification?
It is.
Nice.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh.
Lucio, I'm going to put you on the spot and give you the hardest one.
Thank you.
But I think you're going to get this without even me finishing the questions. So here it is for $1,000. If you're visiting this university in Houston, be sure and say hello to Sammy the Owl, its official mascot.
Oh, rice. What is rice?
Yeah, what is rice?
There we go.
There were some easy ones on there. The embalming one was probably the hardest one because it had nothing to do with Houston, to be honest with you. But yeah, the questions are in our show notes. I've linked that story. But definitely cool to see Houston getting some love on the Jeopardy national scene. All right, y'all, let's get to our biggest story of the week. And Claire, kick it off, set this up, because there is a lot to talk about.
Yeah, so the Houston ISD community was hit with another tragedy this week. This time it was in Southeast Houston. 15-year-old student Sergio Rodriguez was walking to class, and there's some railroad tracks right by Milby High School. And so he was struck and killed by a train at around 7:30 on Monday. A Houston police officer happened to be stopped by the train and responded pretty quickly, but unfortunately he was pronounced dead on the scene. So it's been a really rough week for that community and kind of the district at large. And there's been a lot of updates since then with lawsuits and Mayor Whitmire calling for a new skywalk bridge over the railway.
And Milby High School, by the way, is just east of downtown. And this is a community that has had issues with these trains for a long time. I mean, right there on the Houston Chronicle editorial side, in June, there was a long editorial written about how these trains impact the community, especially when they're stopping, when they're going really slow. And these trains tend to stop and slow down right when students are going to school. And this was an issue that has impacted the community for as long as I can remember. But in terms of being in the media and being covered, it really took off in June, Claire.
Mm-hmm.
What happened? Like, why wasn't anything done? And has the community said anything about this? Like, y'all, this has been impacting us for a long time.
Yeah. So that's exactly what a lot of people have been saying. That story you mentioned on McReynolds Middle School, it's a really hard video to watch because you see kids literally crawling through a train, hopping on a train that's slow moving just to get to school every day. So when this happened this week, city council members, community leaders, and our own editorial board said, unfortunately, this was just something that was just kind of waiting to happen, something like this. So I spoke with Jack Hannegriff, who's been working on rail safety in the East End for years. And he said that Texas has the most at-grade crossings, which means highways where trains intersect, crashes in the country. And East End has the most reports of trains stopping traffic out of any neighborhood in the entire country. So it's a huge issue. It's only been exacerbated by COVID. And there's been a few safety incidents of people being hit by a train before. But unfortunately, this is something that's finally bringing awareness to the issue, I think. Wish it wasn't under these circumstances, but a lot of people are finally talking about it.
I just want to echo like the visual of seeing these kids like literally climbing on moving trains and like climbing underneath, like not to like call myself out, but even when I was younger, I had done that at least a handful of times as well, just to get like, get to where I needed to go. And it's scary being under a moving train. And I can't even imagine what these kids, are just seeing and desensitized to it just to get to class every morning. And so I would imagine reporting on the story itself is possibly taking a toll. So thank you for your good work, Claire. I think you've been really doing a very good job at it, along with your other colleagues who are focused on it. We've also been reporting it here at Houston Public Media. Mm-hmm. It's a very tragic story, but, maybe we'll see some change possibly. I mean, I don't know. What could possibly change? There's so many trains around the schools. So like would the schedules change? Like I'm not even entirely sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I know at McReynolds, they're trying to pilot a program where they'll have trains not cross during arrival and pickup time. So for an hour each day. So they're trying to see if that will be more effective. But yeah, it's terrible. There's a memorial near the tracks. It's just really tragic to see.
Claire, what do we know about Sergio, by the way? How did the community describe the 15-year-old?
Yeah, so I spoke to a lot of students, and the editorial board spoke to even more students. They said he was a funny kid, a really nice kid, made friends really easily. He's on the football team, so they said they had some mementos and a football at a kind of memorial near the school. So I think he was like a really fun-loving kid, and just a guy who loved life, loved sports, and a life taken too soon.
I want to lay out exactly what happens in the morning, right? Because we know Superintendent Mike Miles is very strict about starting school on time. Students need to be there, start the instruction, let's get it going. How much of that pressure plays into what the students are doing when the trains are stopped, right? In this pressure of, I need to get to school on time. I need to get to school on time. I mean, there's so many factors here, right? But was that one of the factors, or is it a factor that still is impacting this community, that kids need to be there on time, but we can't get there on time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I spoke with a lot of students, and there were some kind of conflicting accounts, but pretty universally, they said that the attendance policy is really strict at Milby. So if you're tardy a few times, you get sent into ISS. You could be removed from the school. So I think the pressure is pretty high. And a lot of students said that they've crawled through a stopped or slow train in order to get to school on time. Some said that they think the school was aware of it and even encouraged it to happen. But others and HIC themselves said, no, we waive all tardies on days where there are stopped trains. So they're trying to kind of distance themselves from that. So it's hard to say exactly how much the school knew about it, but I know that's something that a lot of people are looking for answers there, and improved safety, maybe more guards stationed at the railroad. So looking for answers there.
And by the way, ISS is in-school suspension. So definitely want to throw that in there because I have been sent to ISS growing up a lot. So
same here. I wanted to ask about the lawsuit as well, because I haven't had a chance to really take a look at the lawsuit myself. I think a colleague of mine had reported that story out. I believe it was 2 days ago whenever it was filed. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. And there were a lot of updates. It was pretty hard to compile everything together, but Sergio's parents are filing a wrongful death lawsuit against Union Pacific. And they're claiming that the train horn was not sounded before the train struck Sergio. They're also saying that fencing around certain areas, it's a very busy area where a lot of kids are walking to school. There's kind of a supermarket parking lot right there where a lot of parents drop off their kids because it's easier than getting through the traffic, basically. So fencing is something that they're saying could have prevented his death. And then they're filing it against the train operator as well, and saying that better training for employees could have been had to make sure that he was aware that the train was coming before it happened. Mm-hmm. Something else that's factored into the Milby incident, as of yesterday, over 1,000 community members have signed a petition calling to oust the principal of Milby, Ruth Pena. They're saying that because she chose to have school still after the incident, that it was utterly tone deaf and lacking in compassion, to quote the petition. So there's definitely some anger going around at different parties, and understandably when this happens. So that's one way that the community is speaking out.
Oh, wow. I did not see that.
Yeah, I think we might have actually been in that same media availability with the HISD representative. And so it does seem that HISD is actually standing behind the principal.
Let's talk about solutions now for the future. I know there is a sky bridge that's proposed by Mayor John Whitmire. This is something that should have been built a long time ago, in my opinion. But what's the latest on that? And would that help?
Yeah. So at a city council meeting on Wednesday, Whitmire reiterated that he wants to build a sky bridge over that crossing. He thinks it would cost around $6.5 million initial cost estimates. And he said he's going to talk to the Union Pacific CEO, actually, to try to figure that out. So that's a proposed solution that could help. When I talked to Jack Hannegriff, he said that the city has 35 critical crossings that they're looking at to try to figure out how to improve safety in those areas and prevent having trains just stuck there for hours on end and having kids or drivers decide to make riskier decisions.
Yeah, this is something that's impacted that part of our community for a long time. These stop trains, I think everyone knows about it. Everyone has a story about being stuck at a crossing because the train stopped, right? Like we see this all the time. And unfortunately, it took this tragic incident to bring more awareness to it. And here's where I get frustrated, because we've known about it for a long time. And I don't want this to come off insensitive, y'all. Everyone's going to pass away at some point. But when it happens because of something that we've known about, because of potential issues that the community has been speaking up about, but because they are in the East End, we're not going to help them. And somebody passes away, a kid passes away tragically because of this, it makes my blood boil. And I can't believe it. I can't stop thinking about the family. I can't stop thinking about that video in June that the Houston Chronicle put out that we just talked about, where kids younger than 15 are going over trains, going under trains because they want to get to school. And because we are so ingrained with the train industry that we can't get anything done, it's just sad. It's tragic. And frankly, it's a failure from our local officials that they didn't do something sooner.
Union Pacific came out with a statement after the lawsuit was filed, and they said, we're grieving, but he basically tried to outrun the train. So they were trying to distance themselves from it as well. I know no one wants to be to blame for something as horrible as this, but I'd like to see more compassionate responses and more collaboration after this between schools, between the railroads, and between the city to try to figure out how we can make this just better for everybody.
This is still a story that, breaks my heart, y'all. And we are going to keep tabs on what happens next with Sergio's family, with the lawsuit, with the Sky Bridge, if it ever gets built, and so much more if these trains will stop stopping when it matters the most in the morning when students and people are trying to get to work. So we'll keep our eyes on that for sure. Whenever I want to escape the city, I love to go to the Texas Hill Country. It's one of my favorite places on earth, and now you can enjoy the magic of the Hill Country by ringing in the new year at the Omni Barton Creek Resort and Spa just outside of Austin. Start New Year's Eve off with a multi-course dinner with special wine pairings at the award-winning Blind Salamander Kitchen and Bar. Then celebrate with a champagne toast in the middle of a winter wonderland at the Lady Bird Lawn, which will be covered in snow. And the Omni Barton Creek Resort hasn't forgotten about the kids because their experienced staff has an evening full of activities like arts and crafts, games, and movies planned for the kiddos. So the entire family can end 2024 on a high note. Book your table now for the dinner and wine pairings on Open Table by searching for Blind Salamander Kitchen and Bar. And just Google Omni Barton Creek to learn more about all of the New Year's Eve events at the resort. Ring in the new year in Central Texas at the Omni Barton Creek Resort and Spa. Get ready to experience the holiday season like never before in the heart of downtown Houston. This year, downtown transforms into a festive wonderland with 12 unique holiday villages, each brimming with its own special activities to make your season truly merry. From the biggest mistletoe in Texas to delightful pet portraits with Santa, that's where we're going to take our dog for pictures. You also have ice skating, lively silent discos, and so much more. To make exploring even easier, hop on the double-decker holiday bus for a nominal fee and enjoy a magical open-air tour of the city's holiday villages. Downtown Houston is your one-stop holiday destination. Learn more about the 12 holiday villages and plan your adventure at downtownhouston.org/holidays. Get energized and revive this holiday season in downtown Houston. All right, y'all, let's get to our most overlooked story of the week. Lucio, kick it off.
Yeah. So I've got a story from the Houston Landing, looking at the Harris County District Attorney's Office. So District Attorney Kim Ogg, she is on the way out. She lost the primary earlier this year to Sean Tier, who eventually won the election just about a month ago now. So Sean Tier is going to be the new district attorney in about, give or take, 3 weeks. So Ogg, on the way out, has apparently ordered her prosecutors to basically recommend life without the possibility of parole for every pending capital murder case that's more than a year old here in Harris County, which is getting some mixed responses. It does seem that some people, even in her own office, are maybe disagreeing with the directive. Sean Tier is highly critical of it himself, saying that and this is a quote from the Landing article specifically, "In my 14 years inside that office, I have never ever heard of putting a life without parole recommendation on a capital murder before all the evidence and mitigation and everything is in." So these are older cases, right? And we have an overcrowded jail, an insurmountable amount of pending cases in Harris County since like Hurricane Harvey, spanning, I think, about above 100,000 still. So this just adds one more wrench, right? Because these are still more than a year old. For whatever reason, they're either being reset or evidence isn't being compiled in a timely manner. We also have delays in evidence processing as well at the Harris County Forensic Institute of Science. So there's a lot of cogs, and this just adds one more, cog to the machine of the criminal justice system here.
Yeah, we had a sit down with District Attorney-elect Sean Tier that aired this week, and I've linked that in our show notes. Listen to it. But he was very candid about how Kim Ogg is making his life very difficult in this transition. And he's called her administration broken. The system has been broken with the DA's office for a while now, according to Sean Tier, who has, served in that office before and was a prosecutor. Lucio, is she doing this to just make his life harder? Do we know why she's doing this? Because this is, as you mentioned, unprecedented.
I think it depends on who you ask. I think Ogg has a very checkered past when it comes to her opinions about the criminal justice system. She is a Democrat, but according to her peers, she has been aggressive towards other Democratic politicians. And she's also been critical of Democratic judges, saying that they're soft on crime. Who's to say the motivation? It might just be, one last hurrah against these specific capital murder cases. But again, I think it's important to emphasize that these cases are still pending. These people are alleged to have committed capital murder as opposed to have been convicted. So if the evidence is not fully in, and to then recommend life without parole without all the evidence being in on the specific case, just a blanket life without parole for all capital murder cases, it is unprecedented.
Definitely unprecedented, and we'll see what happens with this as the transition period goes from transition to Sean Tier taking office on January 1st. Claire, what is your most overlooked story?
Yeah, so I have a story from my colleague, Elizabeth Sander. She does suburban education for us, and it's about SAT scores. I am the student achievement reporter, so it might be boring to some, but for me, it's kind of bread and butter. So she found that across the Houston area, there was around a 5% decrease in SAT scores from 2019 to 2023. And you might think that that is just because of COVID. Maybe there was a huge dip during COVID and now they're on the way up. But it's actually kind of been a gradual decrease over the years. So that's what I found interesting. I know that, and don't quote me on this, even though I'm on the air, but I think about 2/3 of Houston area students are deemed college, career, and military ready. But the number of students that enroll in college and career certification programs is far lower. So that's something that we're going to be looking into to see where that gap comes from. And this is just another obstacle if scores are getting lower to getting our students to have good post-secondary outcomes.
Claire, by the way, the national trend is also declining. So why is it? Is it because of COVID? I know during the pandemic, colleges started making the test scores optional, but now they are reversing course on that and starting to require them as well. So, what are the factors? Is it because instructional value has gone down? Like, why are the SATs falling? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know. I think those factors you mentioned definitely play into it. And I know we're still feeling the effects from COVID. So it's not too much of a surprise there. I want to pivot and shout out some HISD schools, though, to make this not too doom and gloom. Mm-hmm. Because of the 23 schools that got better, actually, over those 5 years, 6 of them were in HISD. The Young Women's College Preparatory Academy had the highest increase, and then Energize for STEM also had the second highest increase. And then Carnegie Vanguard, which we know is an amazing school, they had the second highest SAT scores overall. So wow. We have some great schools still here. Students are still doing well. It's just something to keep an eye on as we're trying to recover from COVID and make sure kids are not only graduating, we have high graduation rates, but also making it past that.
I did see one other thing on colleges, that the University of Texas is expecting 90,000 students to apply. So I'm thinking these SAT scores better be top tier. Your percentage in your graduation class matters. Your recommendation, everything matters, especially if you're trying to get into one of the more popular schools here in the state of Texas. So I wanted to mention that as well. 90,000 students applying. Wow. Wow.
Gosh, I do not miss that at all.
No.
I applied to UT, did not get in because, I mean, bad at school. It was terrifying being in
Yeah.
that position. And I remember taking the SAT just like sweating the entire time, profusely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I'm glad to be past that.
Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. You know, one of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
All right, y'all, let's do a moment of joy and get things going on a high note as we enter the weekend. I'm going to kick this one off because my moment of joy is that one of my favorite CityCast Houston guests, Scott Solomon, who is also a professor at Rice and the host of the podcast Wild World with Scott Solomon, is doing a live episode of his podcast from the National Geographic Explorer ship from the coast of the Antarctic Peninsula. What? Like, he is going to be doing a live show from Antarctica. Yeah, the broadcast is tomorrow, by the way. It's going to air at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. I've dropped a link in our show notes if you want to watch the live broadcast from Antarctica. Like, that is the coolest. And Scott was at our audience appreciation party. I can't wait. He has a new book coming out. I can't wait to have him back on the podcast. So I definitely wanted to throw some love his way.
Okay. Antarctica. For some reason, when I think of Antarctica, it's like, oh, like the reception must be terrible there, right? So like to do a live broadcast, I'm just like trying to wrap my head around it. Maybe it's just easier than I think, but like seeing like what goes into like making the radio work, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be on YouTube, and they're using Starlink. So Starlink is the satellite Wi-Fi that's available everywhere. But yeah, they're going to be using Starlink to do it. And he said they are confident it's going to work. So I can't wait to see this. I'm so excited for this.
Very cool.
I was thinking about the equipment too. Like, does it freeze over? Can the cameras withstand this?
Yeah, I have no idea. There's so many questions. And if you want to ask him questions, he said you can post it on that link that I've linked in the show notes, and they'll answer it. So yeah, Claire, maybe you got to post that question. Like, how are y'all doing this when it's so cold? What was your moment of joy, Claire?
From another Claire at the Houston Landing. There's a lot of us Claire journalists in Houston. I've been thinking about our unhoused population more as it's gotten cold, just thinking about how they're faring. And this was kind of a bright spot. I feel like that community doesn't always get the greatest headlines. But there's a homeless court in Houston that's helped, I think, 2,700 people since 2006. And what they do, instead of being a traditional court system where you're a defendant and something bad could happen to you, they're looking to resolve fines and help people get back on their feet. So some of the more common Class C misdemeanors that the unhoused might have is fare violations on the metro, or just kind of being out in a space that they're maybe not supposed to be. So what this does is it helps them resolve those issues and then renew or obtain an ID or driver's license, which is huge when it comes to getting housing, getting anything really in our society. So I thought that was a bright spot this week on an otherwise pretty dark week.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a great story. And yeah, that one little piece of identification can change so much for so many people. So thank you for bringing that to the show, and love hearing that. That is definitely a moment of joy. All right, Lucio, let's get to you. What is your moment of joy for the week?
Yeah, so like Claire mentioned, it's otherwise a pretty dark and gloomy week in the world of news in Houston. So one of my favorite things is to go to Houstonia magazine and just read because it tends to not be as depressing as my job. So I have another Houstonia story for us today, the ultimate Texas travel bucket list. So I have not really explored Texas all that much. I've done maybe 2 of these things, whereas Big Bend in West Texas. I love Big Bend. And then touring the Capitol, which I was there for work, so I don't know if that counts, but I was there. But I think it's a pretty nice, robust, eclectic list of things. Like there's a Dr. Pepper Museum in Waco. Had no idea.
Yeah.
Claire, have you been to that?
Yeah, so where I grew up isn't too far from Waco, so that was the main attraction there. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So I was born in New York. I moved here when I was 8, and by here I mean like Deer Park, Texas. So I lived in a suburb basically. I thought Deer Park was representative of all of Houston, so I was like, oh, there's chemical plants everywhere. Just really in that area, I guess. But I've since moved out of Deer Park, and I'm trying to explore now Texas as a whole. And I will say, even though I haven't explored a lot, what I have seen, is vast. Like, have you guys been to Big Bend? Have you guys explored?
I have done Big Bend, and it was a life-changing road trip. I'm telling y'all, I've talked about it before. And by the way, Sofia Gonzalez, who has been on the show before from Houstonia Magazine, put out that list. And I tell everyone, go to Big Bend. Like, I have an email ready to send to people on what you should do, when you should leave, where you should stop. I was absolutely moved by how beautiful that area is.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And I was actually talking to Sophia before she put out this article, and because she also put out a previous article, I think earlier in the week, about East Texas and the hidden beauty, because everyone talks about West Texas. And I told her, like, it looks great, but you should really go to West Texas just to experience it.
Oh, yeah. Well, East Texas represent, but Big Bend is a whole different place. I'm shocked that there's bears there. I think that just kind of shows how different it is from the rest of the state. And I've been a couple times, and it's life-changing every time.
I will say one thing on this list: nothing in the Houston area was on there. Maybe it is go check out the refinery plants in Deer Park. I don't know. Come on, that's a bucket list for a lot of people, right? That's a big part of Texas. I did look at that list, and one that's already been on my list. I was supposed to go this year, but didn't get the time. But Jacob's Well is something that I've already put on my calendar. I'm going my birthday weekend. My uncle in San Antonio, we always go visit him during my birthday weekend. And I told him, like, hey, mark it. We're going to Jacob's Well this time, and we're going to jump in. So if you don't know what Jacob's Well is, it's this swimming hole in Central Texas that is unseemingly an endless well. Like, you just look at it and it just goes down forever, and you can swim in it, and it looks incredible.
It looks very beautiful. And I will say, as someone who can barely doggy paddle, it also sounds terrifying.
Anything on that list, Claire, that jumps out that you want to do in 2025?
Yeah, so I noticed there was an overrepresentation of hill country, but that means that I've been to most of those. I actually used to work at Green Hall, so that was nice to see, kind of a throwback there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's one that people should definitely go to. I was there during COVID, so I don't think it was quite as exciting as it is now, but Olive Green is pretty exciting, and like you said, Jacob's Well, I don't think they found the bottom yet, so it's a little terrifying, but it's really pretty.
Yep. And Green Hall, that's how it's pronounced, y'all, not Gurney. All right. So
right.
Everyone makes that mistake. So I'm glad you brought it up. Claire, Lucio, thank you so much for joining us today. And it was a tough week, but I'm glad that we had a chance to talk about it and end on a high note as well. Enjoy the weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That was Claire Partain and Lucio Vasquez. You can read all of the stories we discussed in our show notes. And while you're there, take a minute to subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Houston. Also, if you're a fan of the show, then please share this episode with 3 friends who care about Houston and what's happening around town. That will do it for this week here on CityCast Houston. Our producers this week were Francisco Kilgore, Lizzie Goldsmith, and of course, Carleon Jones. Our newsletter editor is Brooke Lewis, and our executive producer is Laura Eisensee. I'm your host, Raheel Ramzanali. Our music is by the band All the Kimonos. We'll be back on Monday to hand out our first ever CityCast Houston Awards, presented by Downtown Houston Plus. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new. Is that still a thing, by the way, ACTs? It is, right? ACTs are still a thing?
Yeah, they're still a thing.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Honestly, I was bad at school. I have no idea.
I was bad at both of them.